If you're planning your first Camino, the closer and closer the departure date gets, you might be suffering some Camino nerves or a little bit of anxiety. I am, and this is number 4. And I leave in about 3 hours. So I thought I'd talk about that this week. Why am I anxious and how do I cope with it? Coming right up. So Camino nerves are, I think, perfectly natural, particularly on your first Camino. So let me talk you through a little bit about how I've experienced it, how I've coped with it, and why I think I probably feel more nervous now on my 4th one than I did on my first one. So first of all, if it's your first one, you're probably doing something quite outside your comfort zone that you've never done before. I mean, maybe you're a bit of a thru hiker or something like that, but for most people, you know, traveling for me halfway around the world, it's a bit of an unknown adventure. You know, you might be going on your own, and your mind's going to play all sorts of tricks with you. What if this happens? What if that happens? You see it online all the time. You know, what if I can't find a bed? And will I like the food? And you know, what if this doesn't work? Calm down. It's perfectly natural. So let me run you through some of the things that have been going through my head and how crazy they are. And it will probably make you feel a little bit better too. So I suppose what's a little bit different for me this time is that I've been bottling this up for about 4 years. I mean, it's over 4 years since my last Camino, and I've been planning this for about 3 years. And then COVID came along and it was getting delayed, and then I had all sorts of challenges at work. And so it's been a long time coming, and I've probably really overthought it and researched it too much. And maybe that's sort of created a little bit of anxiety. But I suppose everybody has things they have to cope with in their day-to-day life, and sometimes you kind of have to plan ahead and get all those bedded down before you can be away for an extended period. So I run my own business, which is good and bad. It's hard for me to just leave the business for 2 years. So I actually have to give everybody about a year's notice and let them know, you know, on this date I'm going to be away, and we start preparing like who's going to cover for different things and what will happen, because I don't want calls while I'm away. So there's a whole preparatory period that has to take place there. And then of course, as the departure time comes, you know, I'm chatting to people and like, everything okay? You know, you sure you got this in hand, and how you're going to deal with that? But I'm very lucky. I have a great team around me, and so I'm totally confident. I'll digress with a funny story from my very first Camino in 2015. I did the same thing, gave everybody loads and loads of notice, and we sort of prepared people, you know, to do the various bits and pieces that I do. And I was expecting phone calls, and I think I was in 2 weeks into the Camino. I can't remember exactly where I was, but I thought I'd better just ring the office. And I rang through to my assistant and said, "Is everything all right?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "What are you calling me for?" He said, "If there's something wrong, I'll give you a call. Get back to your walk." And after that, you know, every time I go away, I say no communication unless it's absolutely sort of life-threatening. You know, leave me to have my Camino. So it's incumbent upon me to make sure that everybody's, you know, in a good space, well prepared to cover for me while I'm away. So that, I only mention that because that's a big niggle in the back of my mind. You know, have I got everybody ready for me being away for so long? Then you, of course, you have the same thing on the family side. So how do I put this? I don't have a family who are great at sort of DIY and things like that. So I've been doing household chores for the last couple of weeks. You would not believe what we've been going through, getting possums out of the roof, rehoming stray cats, fixing up stuff around the house because I don't want anything going wrong while I'm away, and I don't want people to have to deal with stuff. And then even this morning we had a final sort of walk around, you know, if something happens with this, turn this tap off and call a plumber. And if something happens here, you know, turn that off. But, you know, all of that I think is important. If you live with other people and if you have responsibilities, you need to make sure that people can cope while you're away. So there's all that stuff. And then there's the personal stuff. You know, this is what's probably been keeping me awake at night. My weight. I mean, if you've been on the channel for a while, I've been trying to, my weight's gone up and down all the way through COVID. I really wanted to get down to a much lower weight than I am currently, but I am well below my last Camino weight. So I'm happy with that. And the diet that I've been on has taught me a better way of eating. So I'm actually looking forward to losing weight on this Camino. I never normally do, but I've retrained myself not to eat too much crap. The other element of weight is my pack weight. So I have been so careful to, weigh everything, and I have my packing list, and you may have seen the video on that. But stuff slips in, and I did my final pack a couple of days ago, and I put the pack on. I thought, that doesn't feel like 6.5 kilos. It's not. It's 7.5. So some stuff has crept in. I'm not going to worry too much about it at this stage. When I get to Spain, I'll actually lay everything out again, and because I have dodgy feet, I think I'll give myself a chance on the first week not to settle in. So what I might do is to take out some stuff that I know I'll need, but I won't need in the first week, and maybe I can take out 1 kilo or 2. I've got some extra camera equipment and stuff like that. I could mail that ahead so that I can have a week with the lightest pack possible, just to get into the swing of things, and then after a week pick up those other bits and pieces. So I might do that. I'll see how I go. I'll just kind of lay stuff out when I get there and decide at the time. The other thing, I suppose, that is really interesting, exciting, but also creates a bit of anxiety is this route I haven't done before. And maybe if I come back to that earlier point about why wasn't I so anxious with the first one? Well, because it was all sort of unexpected. And it was exciting because it was all new, and I really didn't know what the trail was going to be like in the towns and all the rest of it. So having walked the Camino Frances 3 times, it's kind of become a little bit routine, and it lacks that little bit of excitement because I kind of know, oh yeah, we're coming up to this particular town, there's a really good place for lunch, or this next village makes great coffee. So it does sort of dull it down a little bit. So I think it's time for a new one. So this time I'm walking the Via de la Plata, as I've mentioned a few times on the channel. That brings with it some really interesting challenges. The remoteness. I love the remote elements of walking a Camino, and that sense of isolation and solitude. I love that, but I do crave company, in the evenings and things like that. And I know I'm not going to get that necessarily as much as I would like. But I think that's a good thing. It'll kind of get me out of my comfort zone a bit. The stages, and I hesitate to talk about stages on a Camino. There are no stages as such. People get hung up about the stages on the Camino Frances. I mean, there's a series of towns and villages, and you walk through them. And if you look in a guidebook, they're laid out in map sections, stages of roughly a day's walking. I mean, you've got to lay them out somehow. There are no stages. But when you look at a more remote Camino like the Via de la Plata, the infrastructure is a lot more sparse. And so a challenge for me was looking at how can I maintain reasonably short walking days. Everybody says, oh, you've got to walk over 30 Ks every day on the VDLP. You don't. I used the website Gronza, and I did some really careful research and read blogs. I've managed to keep most of my days, planned days, down to 20 to 25, and there's a couple high 20s, nothing over 30. But some of those earlier days of 25 plus, I know are going to put a little bit of pressure on me, and there's not much sometimes between the villages. You might have one village there, 25 Ks, next village, no services, nothing in between. And so that remoteness requires a little bit more pre-planning, of course. You can't just rock up and buy a coffee and a lunch. You need all your, taking into account what's ahead of you that day. You may need to carry all of your water, your snacks and things like that, and so on. So that'll be a little bit different, but good too. It'll be a different style of Camino. What other things cause a bit of anxiety? Training. I'm always hopeless at training. I have the best of intentions, but due to a bit of illness, not losing weight quickly enough, having tendon problems, I didn't train as much as I wanted to. Not that I ever train that much anyway, but I've done some local walks. And then I end up having to get some cortisone shots in my Achilles and my plantar fascia, and that sort of halted my walking for a bit. And in fact, my final shot was this morning. Yes, I'm leaving for the plane in 3 hours. I just know from experience those shots will dampen down the pain that I get in my Achilles after walking for quite a while. So all of that kind of put a dampener on my training a bit, but I'm okay because I'm going to start off slow. So having said, you know, the VDLP has quite long daily walking stages. I'm starting off at 10Ks. I'm only walking to Santa Ponce, is that how you pronounce it? To go and look at Italica, the old Roman amphitheatre. I'm doing that on day one. Then I'm going to Guyena, which is only, I think, 12Ks. Then I go to Castelblanco, building up again, 18 or 19Ks. So I'm going to be sensible and just build up. And like I was saying earlier, I'll try to get a bit of weight out of my pack just for those first few days, just so that I can condition during that first week. Because the last thing I want to do is to go and walk a long day with a heavy pack, you know, the first couple of days, and that's just going to set me up for failure. So I think that's a key thing. If you're not used to a lot of walking, not used to Caminos, ease into it. I've always found that works. It does take a few days for your body to get used to it, and don't try and do too much too quick. So that'll help. What other things are in the back of my mind? Flight delays. So I'm coming from Sydney. I'm getting picked up in 2.5 hours. I'm flying with Emirates to Dubai. I'm stopping in Dubai for less than a day. I've got a couple of meetings to do there. Then I'm flying to Madrid. I get into Madrid about midday. I've got an afternoon train leaving Madrid for Seville. And then I'm starting to think, what if the flight's delayed? Have I left enough time to get through, you know, baggage claim, to get to the railway station? And I got a great tip from a guy on EVA's forum, which I hadn't thought about. So I've got my train ticket booked, but he was suggesting book another one later as a backup. And if you make your first one, you can cancel that later one and get a refund. So as long as you cancel it apparently within an hour of departure, you get a refund, less 5%, I think. But you know, that'll take a little bit of pressure off, because there's nothing worse than you're coming to the end of, you know, a couple of very long flights and you're going, oh no, we're going to land 30 minutes late. You know, oh, that's just self-imposed stress. I probably should have allowed myself longer for that connection from getting to the airport to the train station, but hey, this will work. And then I suppose the final concern would be for many people, it is particularly for me, is injury. I usually pick up injuries on the Camino. I always do. And they get worse every Camino I go on. So I've tried to take care of things and get medical advice and so on before I go. Always very careful to do that. So another reason I'm going to be sort of easing into things gradually, but I have various knee braces and I've got knee problems, Achilles tendon problems, plantar fascia problems. But hey, at the end of the day, I have seen people walk the Camino with artificial legs and all kinds of stuff. So my problems are nothing compared to, you know, what challenges some people have who are walking the Caminos. You always got to remember, you know, whatever you've got to deal with, there's people dealing with lots of other stuff too, lots heavier stuff. So that's probably all the stuff that's playing in my mind, and has led to me, you know, not sleeping too well the last few days, because I'll wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and go, oh crap, I forgot to put that medicine in. Or, you know, the other morning I thought, 3-hour connection between the airport and the station's not going to work. I better go and have a look at another, you know, it's just craziness. So how do I cope with it? And I'm not like this on Camino, I assure you. So how do I cope? Planning. So there's been lots of planning time for this. So I've let people know well ahead, business, family, prepared everybody to be able to let me go for a couple of months, because it's a huge ask for those around you to kind of let you go for a while. Maybe you live alone, but you know, a lot of us have a family, business and so on around us, lots of people that kind of rely on us, and I feel really guilty going on Camino, I have to confess, because those people have all got to step up to allow me to go and do what I want to do. So I kind of owe it to them to make sure that they're prepared and in a good space. So planning helps a lot. Although I generally don't book accommodation too far ahead, I book my first couple of nights and things to get me going. What I do, and particularly on a new Camino like the VDLP, I've done a very rough sort of daily schedule, which I'm not going to stick to because I may walk further than I planned, less than I planned, but it just gives me an idea and it gives me a framework for sort of research, looking at the various towns and accommodation options. So I've got an idea of where I'm going and how long it's going to take and how much buffer I've got. I know I've got a little bit of spare time up my sleeve, so that's good. And I have, backup plans as well. So there might be a couple of sections, for example, where it's a long day and there's only one accommodation option. So I'm sort of thinking through, if that doesn't work out, what's plan B? It's a little bit like, I really do overthink this, don't I? It's a little bit like a pilot, when they're flying. My dad was a pilot. And all the time they're thinking, what's my alternate? If the engines fail now, what's the closest? It's a bit like, what's that? We're landing on the Hudson. Not that you need to stress about this stuff, but if I'm going to that village and the albergue is full, at least in the back of my mind, I know it's 10k to the next one or something like that. I've thought it through. So it's what else? The thing that I think most new pilgrims forget is that you are walking in a first world country. A wonderful country with fantastic infrastructure, brilliant medical services that I've used. If you're walking on, the main Camino routes, you're walking through towns and villages where people welcome pilgrims and help pilgrims, every day. You're going to be meeting other pilgrims along the way who are wonderful people. And, when you have these thoughts going through the back of your mind, what if this happens? What if that happens? I'll let you into a little bit of a secret. All of the things that you thought might happen and cause disruption and concern probably won't, but something else will that you could never have imagined. And when something like that happens, guess what? There's people around you that you can turn to. Locals, other pilgrims, there are always people around to help you out. So don't stress. I think that's the main point I wanted to really share on this video. It is so easy to be stressed and nervous and anxious about 101 things. I've just gone through all the stupid things that are making me a little bit anxious about this one. And in fact, I was just talking to my team at work and they said, "Oh, are you excited, Rob? You're looking forward to going?" I said, "No, my head's spinning at the moment. I've got sort of work stuff and family stuff and all these things going around in my head." I said, "But I know when I start walking out of Seville on that first leg of the VDLP, I know everything will all the stress and the worry will fall away and I'll be back home and I'll be walking on the Camino and I will totally relax." I mean, that's one of the wonderful things about subsequent Caminos. On the first one, it's kind of all a bit, it's all kind of a bit full on the first few days and exciting. New things and not really sure what to expect. This being number 4, I know as I walk out of Seville and over through Triana and the different areas and start walking, I'm not going to go through Camas, I'm going to go on the river walk up towards Santa Ponce. I know that I will just totally start to relax and look forward to what's coming. So that's the key message out of this. A bit of nervousness, a bit of anxiety is common. And that's why I wanted to share all the crap that's going on in my head, show how crazy people like I can get. It's very common, but if you go through your planning and have your little checklists, I've got a checklist out there for my pack's all done, and what are the essentials? Make sure I've got my passport, my credit cards, everything else I can kind of cope without, phone probably. And then once I get on the plane, I'm going to start to relax. And then once I start taking those first steps, I'm excited to see Seville, but the bit I'm really looking forward to is just that first day walking. And I know it's just going to be wonderful. And to think that, I've got 1,000 Ks ahead of me. Wonderful. So looking forward to it. So if you've got any nerves about your first Camino, don't worry. It'll all work out when you get there and when you start walking. So bye for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you very soon.